Hello everyone, my name is Ayesha Siddika Mostarin. Today I would like to explore an interesting question in comparative governance. Is Germany is one of the world's most stable democracies because it is federal or because its institutions make compromise unavoidable? Germany is widely regarded as one of the world's most stable democracies. It has remained a stable democracy after the devastation of Second World War through the Cold War division of its people and following reunification in 1990. But why? Many people assume the answer is simple. Germany is federal and federalism creates stability. This presentation argues that the reality is more complex. Federalism matters, but it is only the beginning of the story. This presentation argues that Germany shows how holding together federalism contributes most effectively to consensus democracy when it is reinforced by three complementary institutions: proportional electoral rules, constitutional checks on executive power, and intergovernmental bargaining. Each institution addresses a different governance challenges. Federalism creates opportunity for bargaining between territorial units. Separation of power prevents any temporary majority from dominating the political system. Electoral rules makes coalition government structurally more likely. Together, these three dimensions creates an institutional architecture in which consensus isn't granted but is structurally encouraged. To understand this argument, we first need two theoretical frameworks. The first comes from Alfred Stepan, whose 1999 article in the Journal of Democracy introduces the concept of holding together federalism. Stephen distinguishes between countries that came together as a federation, such as United States, and countries that held together by developing power to manage internal diversity. Germany is widely regarded as the leading example of the second type. The objective wasn't expansion, it was preserving the unified democratic state. The second framework comes from Arend Lijphart, whose 2012 book Pattern of Democracy explained consensus democracy. Lijphart argues that consensus democracy isn't created by any single institution. Instead, it emerged from a combination of coalition government, proportional representation, strong bicameral, strong bicameralism, and judicial review that together distribute rather than con- concentrate political power. The key insight is simple: these features must reinforce one another. Germany has 16 constituent states known as the Länder, each with its own constitution, parliament, and government. What makes Germany federalism distinctive isn't simply that it exists. It is that it is constitutionally protected. Article 79, paragraph 3 of the Basic Law places Germany's federal structure beyond the reach of constitutional amendment. No government, however large its parliamentary majority, can abolish the lender or remove their participation in federal lawmaking. The participation takes place through Mostarin, which gives state governments a direct voice in federal legislation on key matters, including finances, administration, and constitutional changes. The Mostarin exercise genuine veto power. So, what does this mean? Germany federal design doesn't merely divide authority geographically; it creates permanent institutional incentives for bargaining and negotiation between different levels of government. From Stephen's perspective, this is demos constraining federalism in action. Federalism distributes power territorially, but it doesn't prevent a governing coalition from dominating the rest of the political system. That is where separation of power becomes essential. Germany has two constitutional safeguards. The first is the Federal Constitutional Code established under Article 92 to 94, the basic law, independence of both executive and the legislature. The court review government action and ensure that laws comply with the constitutions. In 2024, it ruled against the government's own electoral reform law, demonstrating that it can constrain even the governing majority. The second safeguard is the constructive vote of no confidence under Article 67. In Germany, Parliament cannot simply remove a chancellor, it must simultaneously elect a successor. This prevents governments from being brought down without an alternative majority ready to govern. So, what does this mean? Together, this constitutional safeguard encourage negotiation rather than obstruction, extended consensus beyond territorial federalism into the broader institutional design of government. Germany's electoral system provides the final piece of the puzzle. The Bundestag is elected through a mixed member proportional system. Voters cast two votes, one for local candidate and one for the party list. Seats are allocated proportionally according to party's second vote, subject to 5% threshold that prevent extreme fragmentation. The overall effect is a multi-party legislature in which no single party can originally governed alone. Since 1949, Germany's federal governments have almost always been formed through coalition involving at least two political parties. Coalition formation is therefore not an occasional feature of German politics. It is a structural constant. Without proportional rules, federalism and constitutional checks would operate in a majoritarian political environment, and consensus democracy would be far harder to sustain. So, does Germany fully achieve consensus democracy? Not entirely. It is important to acknowledge that, honestly, in December 2024, SPD Greens FPD traffic light coalition collapsed after disagreement over fiscal policy proved impossible to resolve. Then, in the February 2025 federal election, the far right alternative for Dutchland becomes the second largest party in the Bundestag. Together, these developments have placed Germany's consensus model under increasing pressure. A critic might argue that Germany's stability reflects its post-war political culture as much as its institutional design. There is merit in that argument. Political culture and institutions reinforces one another, and neither alone is sufficient to sustain consensus democracy. So, what does this mean? German's constitution make negotiated outcome more likely, but they cannot eliminate political conflict or guarantee consensus. Institutions manage conflict; they do not remove it. Let me return to the opening question. Is Germany stable because it is federal or because it is institutions make compromise unavoidable? The answer is both. Not equally. Federalism provides the foundation. Separation of power prevents domination. Electoral rules encourage coalition building. Together, these three dimensions approximate consensus democracy, but none of them alone is sufficient. Germany therefore illustrates that holding together federalism is most effective when it operates as one part of a wider institutional ecosystem rather than a self-sufficient model of democratic governance. Ultimately, Germany reminds us that stable democracy depends less on concentrating power than on designing institutions that require compromise. The references used in preparing this presentation are listed in this slide. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope this presentation has provided a clearer understanding of how institutional design contributes to consensus democracy.